what does raising the reader mean beyond just getting children to read books? How do you take this beyond this idea of getting an art reader? Anyone could start.
So, being with children in a library for so many years, one thing I know is that raising a reader it's not like you're leveling or it's not a benchmark or it's not an achievement. It's a journey. Every child, when you're raising a reader, it's a personal journey of the child. When you're reading where you're building the culture to read, where first, when you're giving a book to the child, then the child wants to read the book on his or her own. And then eventually it comes out, I can't stay without reading. I want to read. It's a part of me. So I just think it's a personal journey. That's the culture that we build right from the beginning. That exactly what Raising Reader means. I would really request this as a parent, as an educator, as a coach, which I meet parents every PRD, and I really want this to go out through these discussions. But please don't level it, please don't have a benchmark, don't set it that I want to raise a reader. It has to be a journey, a beautiful journey. That's what I'm
Thank you. And taking that forward, I was going to say it's a relationship with books that we need to develop. I get the opportunity to speak to parents all the time at the bookstore, and now, of course, we're also working with a lot of librarians. But we tell parents that children are made readers on the laps of parents. So that's where the journey starts, and that's where you start the whole journey with reading. And it again starts from there. And today it requires a community of people, a village to raise readers. It's not just the parents, but then it's a school, it's libraries, it's bookstores like us. So it requires a village to raise a reader today, but it's very important because I feel readers are also, we need readers because we need to raise children who are going to be compassionate, kinder human beings, and not just the relationship with the book, but also better human beings as well.
From the point of view of a writer, this is difficult to say because we hope people out there are readers. So I guess I'll speak from the point of view of a mother. And I think what I did as a mom, the 2 or 3 things that did work and that helped me to raise readers is, number one, my daughter was the youngest member of a neighborhood library at 4 months. And I used to just bring books and read them to her. And she was just obviously captive audience. But the relationship started very early. And the library became a place where on a rainy day, she would automatically, that was the place she opted to go to. And it just became very natural. The other thing I realized was, there comes a time when moms and parents have less of a role in the lives of children, that school takes over and the friends take over. And that gets, that's where the wobbles begin in a way. And I realized one thing, that when I was trying to make my children read, I was giving them the books I read as a child, okay? So Enid Blyton, a lot of Famous Five, Secret Seven, and this is a story I tell very often because my children sort of started withdrawing from books. And it was bothering me. I couldn't understand what was going on. And then one day I had a conversation with them, and I have 3 girls. So they said, we find these books offensive. I mean, obviously they were 6 or 7, so they didn't use the word, but we don't like these books. Because why is it that whenever the mother is sick, the girls have to stay at home and take care, and the boys go on all the adventures? So the only books we actually like by this woman, Enid Blyton, is the ones where all the characters are girls, Malory Towers and St. Clair's, because at least there it's fair. And I realized times have changed, and I realized that I too needed to reread the books I was force feeding to the children. And when I reread them, I found it I reacted badly from the gut as well. And then what I started doing was I stopped buying books for the children and became a member of a library. And we brought home like 10 books, and I just scattered them on the bed, and they had choice. I never said, read this or read that. And miraculously, they all found their own paths in that clutter of books. They felt no pressure because they were not bought. You have paid so much money, the history was not there. And that worked in some ways.
I didn't have it work in the context of a community library. I would say beyond just feeling raising the reader, but also being to create that environment of safety and belongingness for a child to come and keep coming to the place. Maybe not pick up a book, being the first or the second time your child visits, but still keep coming because it's familiar, it feels safe, it feels a place where the child can express themselves. So yeah, that's what we also try to do in our work in the poverty. So yeah.
So I actually resonate with what everyone has shared so far, and especially what Meeta shared about the kids of the village. So I believe there are actually three main stakeholders in raising the reader. One, the parents, the second is the school, and the library is a third space. I've been reading a lot about this concept of a library being a special space for children that is not exactly, parents and all the school, and it's a safe space for them. So I think it's more like an ecosystem that is required to raise a reader. I just do have something to add about parents, though parenting. I think it's really important. There's no real formula as such, but there are a few things that are helpful, such as being a reader yourself, surrounding your child with books and experiences rather than material objects and rewards. So yeah.
Steve, just one quick question on my phone. So, yes, sir. Does that
Thank you so much. And I think you touched on so many important things like talk about access, talk about choice, the role of the parent or any other adult, and of course the environment. And all of that comes together to make a beautiful journey as a child grows in become a reader. And when we see this, we also know that we're moving from the idea of self, to family, to school, community, the world, etc. But just stop at family, because like Sunita said, we know Israel in our laps, right?
Yeah. And
Alright. So my next question is for you. What is a realistic home reading routine look like? I mean, people know that they want to do this with children, but what does it really look like?
It's funny, I have to read books for a living, and I find it difficult to create a schedule for reading. But having said that, I think the most realistic routine would be a bedtime routine, because it's something that a child can associate with comfort, with unwinding, winding down for the day, maybe sharing what happened to the day. And this can become like a lifelong habit that you have to read at bedtime before you go to sleep. So I think that's one point. A second thing is that creating opportunities for reading at any time. Like maybe helping a child create a little reading corner, associating it with having a favorite snack. And you can get a little creative with this as well. Like I know a lot of schools do DAR, where it's drop everything and read. Maybe that's something that can be tried out at home as well, where everyone just puts away their devices and picks up a book and reads together.
Super simple tips there, just make a bedtime routine. And of course, lovely snack is always welcome. And moving from what we do style at home, of course we do this consistently, happens all the time. Coming in the school, and I think Mama also mentioned about the key stakeholders. So my next question is for the school again. It's been, you must have seen so many children and so many leaders, so many kinds of leaders.
Yes.
So in a limited school setting, where probably you get one period per week, 40 minutes per event, 40 minutes. So, what actually works in building leaders or leading culture in a school?
Okay. For a school that will be a setup where I have 40 minutes where I children are also checking out which they would I really remove the attendance of that. The first and the most important thing they know is that they have a choice and theirs. So there is no routine. There is absolutely no routine in my class. They come, the first 10 minutes they explore the shells, which is extremely important because when you're going up to be a reader, you must have that ability to make a choice of what you want to read. And that will only be based on that confidence only builds when you read a lot and you understood what you're reading, when you're sharing what you're reading, when you're connecting to what you're reading. So the first 10 minutes, they are all reading whatever they want to read, then they share. The 5 minutes is like a brief short, anything new that you read, anything that you'd like to share. Then usually I do a read aloud. And trust me, I've done read alouds till grade 9. And my grade 9 has also enjoyed the read aloud and they want to read aloud in every class. In fact, they get upset when there's no read aloud in a class. Read aloud should not be long. Restricted to 20 minutes and usually leave it kind of incomplete, complete it next time. Never try to finish that book in 1 minute, one period, or never have that stress in mind that I have to complete this in this class. Let it go, let them predict, let new strategies come up next time, let them come out with new endings, new discussions, new connections. And then they, after reading out, we discuss the book that I have read to them, which we get on to, the further discussion. I don't just say everything right now, but I do not have a routine. That's my class. And that's how they enjoy coming to the library. They want to pick up a book. Yes, there are some hesitant readers. There are some challenges that they face. And because of those personal challenges, they don't want to pick up a book and read. But that's where I step in. So I go to them, I give them choices, like how Ms. Shabnam said. Give them a platter. First, conversate. So even at home, as a mother or as an educator, it's very important to know your reader, your learners. And then you conversate what are their likes, dislikes, based on them, based on whatever they're talking to you, their conversations develop value. And trust me, it will start slow. But when it starts, it's beautiful. They don't want to stop. Never get upset or never get worried if they're leaving a book incomplete. That's okay. It's absolutely okay. Trust me, they'll do it initially, but then they get used to completing a book once they complete their first book. So let them explore. That's the base stuff. And that's why they love coming to my library because there's no restrictions. You don't like a book? Okay, very bad. But give me a logical reason, like a good reader, then why don't you like this book? Let's talk about it. Where did it go wrong? What's what you don't like here? And then leave it, then we pick up a name. So that's
so many things. On the school academics, we have schools. Huge number. And those numbers always we don't need the protein in our allergy.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. I think so much goes into the way which really enjoys that voice and just allowing them to explore. And when we move from home to school and then we actually step out into the world, now we boast those all around. So I think we are going to get to my next question. So it's a very good one. I'm for 20 years now. It's such a long time. The city loves you for that. Thank you so much for the how do you curate shells depending on what sells versus what you believe should be there?
You know the answer to that, because I curate like a mother. I have to confess, I curate like a mother. And the whole idea of starting Kahani Tree 20 years ago was when there was no Amazon, there were no websites. I started with 2 independent publishers, Purika and Katham. And now we support 32 Indian independent publishers, so that's really matter of weight, right? But yes, I curate like a mother. I do not allow certain books to come into the library, not because they should into the bookstore, not because I feel they shouldn't be read, but I think these are books that can be borrowed from a library, read and returned. So there are certain series that absolutely don't come to the bookstore, and when children come and ask me for them, I say, like for instance, I say Geronimo's gone on a long holiday, and from Karachi, and he's not here, and then they're forced to look at other books, and that is the whole idea, is to have a curated collection. And again, to just briefly to go back to why I started Karachi was to diversify my children's collection. That back in 2006, there were only international books in their collection, and the Mahabharata and the Amachitra Kathas. But there were no books, contemporary Indian books, and I felt it was so important to have those with Indian characters in them. So Karachi was started primarily with the aim of diversifying my children's book collection, and also because I had to stand in line with Hindi teachers for a long time. For both the kids, I stood in lines with Hindi teachers who said, "Aapke bacche Hindi nahi padhte hai." So where were the Hindi books that way? 2006, no websites, no online, no Amazon. Good times because there were no Amazon. But so we have now several Hindi publishers that we support that we're very proud to have on our shelf. And I actually don't let people access the international books that I have in the store without passing by Indian books. So the Indian collection of books is still up front, and I'm very proud that they still count to me. People still count for the Indian books. That's what Karachi counts for, and then they discover other books in the store. So yes, curation is a big part of what Karachi stands for. And because we are a small little bookstore tucked away on the second floor of an obscure building in Kabade, why would people come to the store? Unless we have a curated collection and they find something that they don't see in the mainstream bookstore. And that's the main reason they picked up. So yes, curation is a big part of what I do.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so important because suddenly, as educators, as adults, to think about just doing that little filter before we had most into the library, it was really helpful. Also, makes me think about how powerful our job really is. At the end of it, to decide what should happen and how their lives are going to be shaped. Thank you. And moving from here, we are now going to enter the line of offer. So, Shabna, when you write for children, what is it that you hope children will take back from your stories? Just having beyond entertainment. That's not easy, right? We all have.
To be honest, for me, entertainment is very important. Okay, 80%. Beyond that, so when I just started out as an author, I had a lot of parents come to me and say, "What will my children learn from this book?" Or what is the moral of your story? And I actually reacted very badly to that. Couple of things. I don't believe that a story needs a moral. I believe that a story is a story, and a child wanders through it and has the choice to take away the messages or the ideas that are there. I will put in my ideas, but you can react completely differently. That's entirely okay. So I write for two reasons. I mean, the stories I write. One, I want to write books which reflect the lives of Indian children. I guess because we're such a varied country, I would say urban Indian children, because I don't have the know-how and capacity. I don't know the world outside urban India that well. But I want children, when they pick up my books, to see themselves and their lives. And I feel that's critical. And there is another story I always tell you when people ask me. When I was very little, about 6, I went to my mother and I said, I want something very badly. And my mom looked at me and said, "What?" She was, I think, cooking in the kitchen, boiling milk or doing a mummy thing. And I said, "I want to go to England." And she gave me a very puzzled look, because we were not the kind of family who could drop everything and go to England. We were barely the kind of family who could drop everything and go to London. And she said, "What?" And I said, "Because there's magic in England. Mr. Pink Whistle is there. Magic Faraway Tree is there. Wishing Chair is there." And I felt very, very deprived that I was in this grey city, nothing going on, only loud buses. What the hell? Where? I want magic and adventure in my life. And when I started writing, I was determined that I would inject, but not even inject, I would show children that there is magic and adventure in the grayest of streets, in the grandest of buildings, you can find your Mr. Pink Whistle. That was one thing. And the other thing I really wanted children to see was their little problems, the things that the children are so overwhelming and engrossing that adults seem to think is not a big deal. So I'll tell you a small example. I've written a series of books, funny books, on a character called Nimi. And they're not very serious. And I wrote them in a very ha-ha way. But I realized that after every session I ever did on Nimi, so in the first Nimi loses her best friend, who is a girl named Sophia, who starts being Nimi's best friend and becomes best friends with the cool girls. And this is something I've seen in my daughter's life. It's a repeated pattern. I have been many times, but fine, it was a little anecdote. But after every session, about 3 little girls, always girls, 3 little girls would wait. And then they would come to the table and say, Auntie, you know, my best friend Ria, she also, I don't think she likes me very much. Or, you know, my best friend Tasneem, she's stopped talking to me that much. You know, she prefers another girl named Janvi. And it broke my heart. And then they would all hang around and I wonder, what do they want from me? They wanted one answer. So, will Lily find another best friend? I knew that in Lily Part 2, I had to hurry and get Lily a very good best friend. And I think that is very important, that children see their problems in a book and know they can be resolved. So that is the little thing I wanted to do with Melons.
I love that. Children see problems in books and solving it. Related to their lives and solving the same. And we actually speak about problems when we talk about libraries and books are mirrors and windows. Children see themselves, they also get to see what doesn't exist in their immediate environment. And just thinking about that, answering my next question is to you. Because you have worked with community identity. And I'm sure, like a school library where children are listening to be there, they have to come and visit library, help them all of those things as well. And it kind of fits into that. But for the community library, I'm sure the experience has been different. So, what role do you feel access, language, identity play in the child's life in the closer roles?
Right. I'll speak from my experience of how it actually began for me at my work at Kitab Mahal, which is the community library that I work at. When we started as initially, and this was around the time that the library was kind of undergoing a phase where children couldn't turn up, right? This was right after the pandemic, a few months into the pandemic. What happened was that when children came to the library, one of the challenges that we faced was that children themselves were not able to read. Of course, like we had this tables in the library who would read aloud to the children, who would read books to the children. It was very rare that you would see children themselves come and spend time with books to read. And one of the major constraints there was literacy, right? Because one thing was that we identified a lot of our collection was in English language. And children were open. In fact, in schools they would learn in Marathi, learning verbal vocabulary. So that's where we started. We started thinking about that we need to really diversify our collection. But also at the same time, how do we sort of think about this literacy versus like what is the purpose of the space, right? Like, is it to like teach children how to read, or is it to like get children closer to books? And quite frankly, we're also not very equipped with the literacy part of it. So what we did is that we put in as much effort to read books to children, to tell stories to children, to engage children with a lot of art-based activities, and
use that as a means to bring them closer to book. And what we saw was this shift, where children after school started coming to the library to sit and practice when over, which was writing alphabets, practicing numbers, reading out loud, trying to read out loud to the facilitators, which means that they were trying in order so that they themselves could take the book and read. And that was phenomenal for us, like we felt very overjoyed and overwhelmed at the same time, seeing something like that, because finally our work had been not by doing the direct thing, but rather, using this way to facilitate and read books to children. So yeah, that is one. I think when we think of identity, because the library that I worked in was a neighborhood that was predominantly Muslim and Dalit communities. We just wanted them to feel safe, to feel comfortable, to feel familiar enough. Because we didn't want them to feel how they might sometimes feel in schools, in settings of formal education, or outside of Govandi for that matter, where the library was. And Govandi is one of the most marginalized and neglected neighborhoods in the city. So we wanted them to find a reality. And we also celebrated identity, right? Where we came from, and we were there for the Dalit History Month that we celebrated together 2 years ago. So this was our effort. And when it comes to speaking about access, of course, with public schools, and because public schools do not have that kind of even though you would want to, don't have the kind of capacity to expose children to outside of just the curriculum, or sometimes don't have the infrastructure to. What we try to do is that, of course, I also find a collection, and a lot of visits were made to the History. Sana and Parva, I closely work with, I think it was all of them. Used to go to Kanhani, and we used to get our books from there. Also, multiple other partners that we had. That's the effort that we put in, is to introduce children to as many different kinds of books, as many different kinds of stories as possible. But also gain access to this space, right? Which this space is not really your regular school, or has that environment of a formal setup, but rather feels familiar, but also encourages you to push yourself, to be involved, to hear more, to be around your friends. So that kind of creating that sort of a mental space is kind of important for us in a neighborhood that we are very much familiar with. I think you've touched on so many important points. And I think when we do think of books and libraries, we feel that, we've got a library open, children come, they read, but how many children actually know how to read? How many children are actually comprehending what is written in that book? And that's why I think what you mentioned about storytelling and art and getting children. First of all, just be safe in that space. It's so important. Would you like kids to go up there?
Yep.
I saw them this time. This junction. I will not need it. Shift is yours. Shift is. You can cut that with you. Good.
So it sounds lovely to have this, conversation about books and library. So we all know that there's one big enemy we are all living in the world. That children reading as much.
And
Or sure is no. And something like a couple of years ago, when Netflix, the CEO of Netflix, has said that where you're eating with your sleep and you're working. I'm just sort of imagine you're eating with your sleep and you're working. And we have actually started moving away from books. The devices, there are just so many distractions that today's students have to deal with. So my next question actually is all of you. Because of these attention spans that are following, what do you think, who is responsible for all of it, and who perhaps is in the best position to fix it? Because we want to get our children back in the service of Friday or slow. Who's responsible and how do we fix this?
Anyone could start.
So, I think, the most important, I think there is a challenge that we all face is time. Children these days don't have time to use it. And we're so used to this instant gratification because of technology that everything is so fast-paced. And reading cannot be fast-paced. It needs that immense indulgence, slow-paced understanding, time to connect with the book, connect with your reading. And that's what children don't have these days. And that's why, as educators, it is very important for us not to restrict reading at school. So when she said 3 stakeholders, I completely agree. So when the school plays their role is to not restrict reading only to the library or only to one period. Reading should be all over. Like in my school, there are reading hours even in the corridor. On staircases, there are books kept throughout school. Wherever you get time, whenever you have a period, you're just allowed to go sit in any corner, create that time to read. As parents, what I completely agree with Ms. Chawla, we need to model. We don't model everything. We ourselves are on our phones all the time. So when we are on models, when we don't tell children about books that you read, about books that you like, or they like, and you can ask or share their view from a child. Keep them dinner talk, keep them a park talk, when you talk to them to school, or when you're picking them up, when you're going to a restaurant. It's okay to talk about books at any time. I remember this one parent probably, they were talking about a book when they were swimming. And the child had a fabulous time because during the 45 minutes of the class, the child could also see where the 45 minutes passed, and we shared about a book which I didn't know which I had actually read, and I felt so good about it that now, I told you what I read about. So, time is the biggest constraint, and as teachers, even as librarians, we try to give them as much as time. Don't restrict their reading period, that the book has to be completed in 1 week or 2 weeks. Give them that time, give them that so they are out of walk in my library at any given point in time. I actually don't have a lunch break or short break or any restriction. They are free to come and sit in any corner and read. So, for me, the biggest challenge I think children will, and at the second grade, telling me, still actually because I don't have time to read. I have so many classes, I have to go, I want my diary, I want this and that, and I don't have time. So, no time is simply stuck in my head. And I think we need to create that time.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's one of that.
Just to quickly add to what you said, it was actually one of my responses is that a simple thing that you don't really have to just encourage children to carry a book wherever they go. Wherever you get the opportunity, to get the dentist clinic, stay at the airport, and you read. So this doesn't have to be so planned or structured. I just want to actually share a couple of messages of hope. I think there's a lot happening in the public space. There's a lot of reading in public parks, and I don't know if any of you have read about the Metro project. So, oh, you're involved in that? Oh, okay, amazing. So, it's almost like a movement, you to become part of this movement.
Yeah.
we have these stories. There's one small thing I really feel that peers play a huge role.
Yes.
And the minute writing is considered, I hate this word, but it is an overwhelming force of the lives of children.
We all said this and that.
Also, yes. And we've seen it now. We've seen all of us were been in libraries. I was an on-volunteer. At least these fights. Harry Potter school, even the non-readers will read it. If Percy Jackson is school, even the non-readers. And somehow we have to catch that wave and spread that cool factor.
But also, I would want to add something over here what I see and what I have seen in so many years. Firstly, the biggest aware challenges are definitely don't, treat reading as assessment. Every reading does not have to be an assessment. Please don't associate every reading with academics, with, it should be a task. It should be something that you're connecting to, something that you're enjoying. It should be your choice. It should not be a task presented to you that you have to complete this book or you have to reach that level by the end of this year. You have to complete 20 books. It's a solitary affair and maybe wrong, but I teach 500 kids a year, and in my 40 years, I've seen many. And sometimes with pets or I challenge to colleagues to this way. And why I don't know what my child is reading to, I'm reading them. But is your child reading those or is your child skimming? There is a big difference. Maximum children these days is skim through words. They don't even know the meaning of what that word is. But because it's there, oh, miss, I finished it as reading of Harry Potter. A big 2,000 every time. It is amazing. It's amazing if you understood the book, if you're able to comprehend the book, if you're able to understand the story structure. But if you want, then it's not a complete reading. That's incomplete reading. And it's as well as not reading.
Chris?
I would like to build on what Rosy shared. I think last year also kind of in India, kind of pedagogical culture or kind of pedagogy where we see it in schools, right, where reading or like rote learning for that matter is detached from this, and it's attached to an output to you like scoring well in exams or passing exams for that matter. And that's the reason why reading is never seen as a pleasurable activity. It's not seen as something that you can enjoy because I think children have always been pushed to read or to learn because they want to pass an exam or because they want to have it's attached to performance, right? And I think that's one of the key factors. The other reason I feel is also that our like public schools, generation these years while speaking, don't have that kind of infrastructure. Like I think in private schools, I have worked with also practitioners who are more active as veterinarians in private schools rather than in public schools, right? So, which tells you what section of communities or children reading is more accessible for. So, which is not the case for a lot of children who go to public schools or for that matter EMC schools in Mumbai. So I think we should also get started from there because purely public schools don't have that kind of infrastructure that it takes to push reading as an activity of pleasure rather than just learning.
Sorry.
To add to all these wonderful points that everyone has raised, we've also had a program which has been done with Bookworm and Sujata Vadona, who had done a session at the store, which was teachers as readers. And unless teachers rediscover the love for reading in their own personal lives, how are they going to share this with their children? So I think we facilitated some workshops at the store for teachers and educators where they can spend time with curated collections and rediscover the joy of books for themselves. Because once they do that, they're going to be able to pass that on to children. And I think we tell parents all the time that you can't be, saying one thing to the kids and doing something entirely different yourself. So you have to model reading for pleasure yourself, and they have to see you with books and magazines, and just reading for pleasure yourselves, because the kids are watching you and they're observing everything that you do. So be consistent, because they're going to call you out very quickly if you say one thing and do something entirely different.
Thank you so much. I think I also work in school, so very often, the conversation always come back to how reading useful is the idea as responsibility. And now we're slowly seeing how reading actually is any adult who's on the culture and getting child to be a reader becomes anyone's responsibility. Whether you're a school librarian, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, whether you're so many different ways that you can get a child to access books. But sticking to the whole theme of attention span, for you, because children don't, like I said, they don't read as much. So how do you plan your stories? Because you know that the audience that you're writing for, things have changed. So is there a plan on how you build those stories to them?
It's a bit complicated. Every time I start a book, my editor would say, make it short. Everyone wants short books, and I don't know any of you who've seen my books. They're really short. They're really nice and overweight and chunky, and add to your hand luggage in a substantial way if you're traveling with it. But I think what has changed, and I haven't done this deliberately, I think it's just part of living in the world of short attention spans. I think my writing style has changed. A lot of my conversations are WhatsApp messages, so they'll be shorn of description, then just that's very easy to do, because sometimes as a writer, some of the most tedious things to write are important conversations. Because if you have 4 children in a room and they're talking, you can't just write the words, right? You have to say, she did this, she touched her hair, she looked hungry, she asked for water. It gets very tedious. WhatsApp is a great solution to this. So they all go to their own bedrooms, which is so realistic, and they're all messaging each other. Sometimes they're even sitting in the same room and messaging each other, which is a sad fact of our lives. So I've noticed that my writing style has definitely changed. Like, I have a new book out called Death Comes to Mathura, and the publisher had a cow laying it out because there were so many different formats. There's a diary, there's WhatsApps, there's phone conversations, there's a conversation with the Airbnb owner on the Airbnb site, there's a Google Doc that everyone is jumping into and adding, and that whole formatting and layout took forever. But I think it works for short attention spans, I think. I mean, it's proof of the pudding and all that. The other thing is, of course, make your story so compelling and it doesn't matter. People will read it. Thus, that you have to be a genius, and I don't know how and when and if ever one will get there.
I think the good story already flats. How you watch the same movie over and over again. You of course see that favorite book over and over again. So, Sangeeta, because I'm sure you also have to deal with this quite often. So when children walk into the store, how do you actually keep parents and children engaged with all the things that happen in the store, and how do children respond to all the events such as books?
Yes, it was a huge. I often have to play the role of mediator when the kids walk into the store, but I think it's something that has now happens very organically. So kids choose books instinctively, by cover that they like, title that they like, humor. It's sometimes they don't know why they're choosing books, but I'm always fascinated by why they pick a certain cover, a certain book, and I've tried asking them, and very often they don't know why they selected the book, but it's always fascinating. And everything in the store gets picked some type or the other, so I always find there's a reader on every book. So just when I think that this book has been sitting quietly on the shelf for so long, suddenly I have a reader for that book, and that's just done. Parents, of course, coming with very intentional choices that they want to make with the books, and They need to have, whether they're at the right level, whether they are, that's always a problem because they'll come and ask you that what should my 6-year-old read or what should my 8-year-old read. I'm like, tell me about your 8-year-old before I can suggest a book because everyone's 8-year-olds are different. So tell me about your reader or what have they read last that they liked. And so it's always a conversation. So I think what happens at the store is it enables us to have conversations, and that's something that Amazon will not be able to do. You can't choose books by algorithms. It's serendipity. It's discovering books. It's wandering around the bookstore and stumbling upon the right book. And that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have these conversations with parents and children. And to solve the problem of the parent, yesterday we had a young boy who was about 8 or 9 years old and had discovered a Mr. Men book that he chose his adult middle grade book, which was, I think, part of the Me Reading Challenge. So his grandmother was happy, she had brought him in. And then he found Mr. Nonsense. That was missing from his Mr. Men collection. And so the grandmother looks at him and says, but you're too old for this book. And he says, but I really have to have this book. And then he looks at me like, okay, figure this out. So I said to the grandmother, I said, do you know, my children now 30 and 35 that still have their Mr. Men books on my shelf. They love that. And it's okay. It's part of his reading journey. It's only about 65 rupees. I sniffed it gently. And I said, let him have his Mr. Nonsense, And he was hugely grateful to me and walked out very happy with his Mr. Nonsense. But yes, I think it's nice to let them have books that are easier to access and let the joy remain of them. And it's important to keep the joy of it. Yes, we want to add.
Yes, I would really want to add something here. This is what I exactly do, and I completely believe in that. So when I did free that my learners, I encourage them to be, I divided my library into 2 sections, like an easy fiction section and a fiction section. So the primary library. So fiction section I want to pay 4, 5, 6 or anything else. And I encourage them, if you don't pay £5, then you try and read a book of easy fiction. So I tell them, when I entered this library, I should not read about the emperor and the nightingale or the little and then I came here and read these books, and they're beautiful. And I usually said, and it was like people come and just a casual conversation. And like, these are books, and you enjoy it, and these are books you finish it 10 minutes only, I promise you. So they eventually now want to read books within their free time, which we never explore. And that's how the exploring journey begins. And I see that and they really enjoy it. And there was this one week when I introduced actually to them. I just did a read out, then for 10 minutes. And then the entire week, every class, like this, because like Mr. Men, I introduced them, and it was based on stats and like, there were grade 3 years who didn't know what model was. Children came in, Miss, you're not allowed to read this at home. This is a baby book. And no books are baby books for, like, please don't restrict reading. And I tell you, and I tell to parents, as individuals, we give ourselves that agency to choose what we want to wear, to choose what we want to eat. And when we force our child, try this food, try that food, it's good. Why are you wearing the same kind of clothes when we go shopping or try this? So why not reading? Let the individual decide, let them choose. And trust me, you will see the difference. I can see it. Then start falling in love with reading. It's not that makes sense. So reading, whatever little they're reading, they're enjoying it and it's meaningful.
Well,
Your choice in boys.
Yes.
Generates that love for reading. Mansi, any example you could think of how perhaps your library helped with that you are doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so, like, I wouldn't say reluctant years, but they took time to grow fond of reading. And
Like in my would have there were these two sisters. There are these two sisters who come to them. I am not associated anymore. So they used to not go to school, and they used to come spend most of the time at the library, right? And while at the library, they used to like mostly play at the library or just sit there and just be around. And slowly, when we started, taking sessions, specifically sessions, they used to of course join us. And this, as we also kind of progressed in our work, they started showing up more at the library, and they grew fond of books. So they would be present, like if not anyone, they would be present at the library. What happened was, so they used to also not go to schools. They had a lot of time in their day to come and spend time in the library. And when we asked that why not go to school, we were told that the school needs your identity documents. School needs certain documents to be placed in order to seek admission. And our parents don't have the right to do that. But what happened over a period of time was that the parents started noticing that the children are out of their house for a long while, and when they didn't know where they were at the library, I'm sure they must have asked them that why do you like going to the library so much, or where do you go for that campus? What happened was that parents didn't take out the anything. They did take out the time to get the identity documents and have these children go to school because they realized and acknowledged that the children were really fond of receiving and books. So yeah, I think this is one of the stories that will stay with me. It's absolutely amazing. Again, we very rarely think about the space, planetary the space, and there's so much learning that actually happens in there. So I'm just going to try to come and just be. Thank you so much.
I want to share one incident. I had this boy who was not known to the concept of library. Very strange. First ever, and I think the only one in my entire career till now. The library is not aware that there is such concept and you read that born was. So for the longest time he was very quiet in class. He would not interact because his reading skills were so underdeveloped. We were not able to write. And then, obviously, the first step that came to my mind was to talk, to communicate, to start a conversation, to let him feel safe. Like she said, a safe space is very important. We should not feel left out at home. And then we started talking about his likes, dislikes, and then I appointed buddies to him. And every week, 2 weeks, the buddy would change. And buddy would read a book to him. And then both of them together present the book to the class. So initially he was not doing the reading, he was doing the listening. And then he was doing the presenting. Then slowly they started sharing. Then the next task was to share everything. And we came to know that he loves football. Today he has read the entire series of the series of football, the Rising Stars, Amazing Stars series, and he's completed the entire series. He's in grade 6 today, grade 7 today. And it's thanks and accomplishment for me. From where he came to more reading today, and he only reads non-fiction books related to forest, but that's an achievement. He reads. And we started step by step from no reader to a reluctant reader. Today, an average of good reader who's enjoying his reading. So I think that's an achievement beyond, I feel.
Excited.
Just a quick add-on to that, so that's such a lovely thing spoken. But yes, so I find that boys are generally reluctant readers and also prefer non-fiction per se. this question is reduction. I think we just have to work harder at finding the right book for it. So even in our store in libraries also, I think it is such an there is a little corner for books. If they say I don't like books, I only like football or I like cricket. So we say, yeah, we have a book on football and cricket, and the parent looks at me and says, that's not what I wanted it to be. And I said, you know what, let's pick that, and once we let's get into the door, and once we're in, we widen it, you know. But let them pick what they like, and so be it. So we have good books and non-fiction books for all these sports and dogs and robots, and so whatever it is, let's just get in through the door and then try and learn it. That's what we want.
Lovely. I think again coming back to small steps.
Yeah.
The next question is for you, Bhavna. I think so much has been said about us modeling what good reading looks like, what good reading habits looks like in place. But often we find that there are parents who think of themselves as good readers. So how to use the both them to build that confidence read those role models literally.
Wow, good.
Actually, I started working with the dance in 2022, and this happened because some parents approached me saying that they don't read, and always reading with the children was like a lot of fun. So I started with this experimental reading program called Imaginary Stories, which is a hybrid book club companionship experience. And I think the biggest discovery with that is that we started reading picture books, children's picture books, and children's literature basically. And I personally believe that adults stop reading pictures very early, stop reading books with art and illustrations. And I strongly believe that once you start, it will totally catapult you back into reading. So a bunch of things, reading picture books. Another thing that can be explored and encouraged is read books with your friends as a child. Read your favorite book from your childhood or your adolescence. Get a different perspective. Join a book club, because it's in that community setting that really encourage to read a lot more. Visit events around books and reading, go to bookstores. Yeah, so I think these are some suggestions.
Sorry, I was missing.
But picture books are hugely important because I just want to add, because I feel really strongly and passionately about it. Think of it as a warm-up. If you were to start playing a new sport, you can't just go into it right away, right? You have to build up. And I think we can really help you build that confidence. You finish it in 2 to 10 minutes, and we just, sort of scaffold from there.
So I have a lot of parents who come into the store saying that we don't read, but we want our children to be readers. And that's huge. It's so, and I'm so happy to hear that. A lot of them are discovering picture books with their children, because a lot of us, me included, we never had picture books apart from how much we could have. We never had picture books when we were growing up. So discover picture books with our children today, that's a huge, it's the best time for children's literature, because some of the most fabulous picture books are available both in the Indian space and the international space. And it's a great way to start reading with children. For older children, I tell parents also to continue to read aloud with children who are older. We have lots of parents who are reading Harry Potter with their kids, because their kids want to start reading Harry Potter very early, 6 and 7, which is too early. So the nice way to do it is, most parents are that age to have Potterheads themselves, and so they would read Harry Potter with their children and give a bookmark. So it's a great way to sort of place the book with your children. So, but I think they realize the importance of raising readers, because I find that, now the experience, I find the children who read, I should say this perhaps a little, is that children who read are better behaved than children who don't. I truly believe that. And I can spot a reader as soon as they walk into the store. As soon as they walk in, it's just the way they engage with the books in the store, how distracted they are when they're looking around. But children who read are better behaved than children who are not. And maybe parents want better behaved children, so that's how they read, you know. But yes, it's lovely that there are more readers coming in, and I have seen an increase in reading, so I have to say I'm very pleased with the number of readers who walk into the store.
Actually, sir, it's actually interesting that
Yes, I would add that the word there meaningful reading. Children who read meaningfully are actually more empathetic, more connected to the world, more level-headed. They know what they're doing because as we began the conversation, it's like a mirror, a window. So they don't need validations from people. They're making connections with the book. They're viewing themselves in the book. So that connection is way better. Then they are also seeing it as a window. So they are looking at different, and that's also, there are monitoring diversity. Children reading varied cultures, folk tales. We don't look at folk tales as an important reading these days. Like I have a special place in my heart for Indian authors, Indian publications, folk tales, mythological tales. They teach a lot. And through, not teaching, but through the reading that she said, children are just learning. And I think it's a lesson for life. And that's something which I noticed. I'm just very simple to be kind. They have nothing. They just have simple ways how a child can find for other children. And then you just get coloring activities, but painting activities, and an activity that created a song on different ways in which you be kind. The children came up with a song. They had to write the lyrics.
And then they had to create this log, a journal where they had to just note down in a week different activities where they did an act of kindness. Simple thing like giving my house help a glass of water. They learned it. Nobody told them, but they understood that this was an act of kindness through reading. So I completely agree with her. When reading is meaningful, children grow up to be good individuals, good human beings. Yeah. So, I think. Check. Is what it is.
Okay.
I think there's so much more you just shared also. Because, as I was reading how engaging with the phone so often is now causing anxiety, causing people's mind as sleepless nights. There's so much that is not messed up in us. But the minute you pick up a book and you disengage and it's offline and you're just sitting there reading, there is some magic that happens. Just to wind this whole thing up, we've spoken about access, we've spoken about identity, we've spoken about choice, voice. I'm missing anything the audience can fill in these. Anything else that you picked up from the conversation? Meaningful reading, so important. Reading picture books, amazing. Yeah, so, they're just wonderful. You pick up a picture book at any age, it works. Please, absolutely. I think this space for children come in and become readers, or just, as I said, just for them to be this as explorer.
Also, I'd like to add different languages. Please promote read alouds, reading in different languages. There are bilingual books which are available and they're very good. And we don't restrict it only to English. Of course, English is our primary language of our education, of academics. But do not, just give importance to our other languages. We are so culturally rich. I do read alouds. I use maximum languages. I use Hindi, I use Gujarati, and learning new words. And children are always more intrigued to know about a new language, to read more when they're learning new words in different languages. Spanish. There are books it's English and Spanish. I don't know Spanish. And it's okay to tell them, I don't know. I am learning through this reading. So even then, they want to learn through that book. And then children came up with so many new Spanish words. It's just, I think, please keep that in mind also. That was one important thing.
And we had a beautiful setup of books where we have a nice to listen to the backyard. So before, if you could explore and buy after the sessions during the place. So please have a look. Different languages, different kinds of characters, different worlds that people belong to. So important for children to understand what's happening around them. And just to quickly close all of the loops. If there's something, let's take this rapid fire style. What's something that we should stop doing immediately, make children readers, and something that we will start doing from now on?
But not to.
They're not just think about that.
Stop making it a task.
Yes.
Please stop making it a task. Don't. Let it be a pleasure, something that they enjoy. It's their joy, it's something that they love to do. It's their life. Don't make it a task. I think everything is there.
Something start doing.
Something they should start doing every day. Little bit, one page, no completion, like no measuring, like no boundaries that you have to not be there. This is your task week, this is your benchmark, there is no. Just read everything, little bit, and that's the main I think.
If I let it belong. Yeah, I mean, you said it all. Keep it joy. And don't make it work, don't make it an assessment. And I think so keep the joy and read every day.
Totally agree with Rosny. The worst thing parents can do is say, I will give you half an hour screen time if you read it. That is the death of reading. It should be, reading is the reward, not the punishment. And something you should do is create a world of books. Your house should have books just like it has tables and chairs and in the kitchen and milk and sugar. It has to be part of the every minute.
I second with
What everyone has shared.
Think we have to go.
Two quick things. One is don't give up. Did you help somebody find that book that they love and just keep at it? The second thing is to not commoditize books. To make sure that you place books in a very different category from material objects. That was a point that I was actually going to talk about. That for parents, in fact, it's very important to really give a child a separate budget for books. So we place it in a special category.
And don't censor. Let children explore.
So many happy ideas, so many things for us to think about beyond this conversation. And like I said, we're only trying to see what possibilities emerge. We don't have all the solutions, but I think we learn best when we learn together as we pick out. So thank you so much. Everybody from the panel, Bhavna, Mansi, Shravana, Sangeeta, Rosemary, and of course our beautiful audience. I hope beyond BIS and beyond medical these conversations will continue. And I'm going to ask my team, do we have time for maybe one or two audience questions? Okay. All right. Now, they're going to keep a check on us. My job.
Please, God watch. Please.
Should it come? I didn't get it.
Hey, just do. Up to Adam.
Thank you. So, what I want to share was that last year we had a book tasting and a family for all our members, and we set up tables with different concepts. And a lot of times kids just don't know what exists out there. They used to really want to book and they just not go to the conference, so check at that. But there's so much out there and such interesting and it's worthy. So we did it like I said that, and we got about 10 minutes to read the book. Like they were told that was to read the back of the book where the summary is given, and then if you like it, you can start reading it. And it will be a time limit, and then we shift the next genre. And that's how you could like maybe 4 or 5 get that much time. And I'm not kidding. The very next week I got calls from my parents and they won't try this book, they don't try this, they really like reading this. So I think that was a fun way to introduce new subjects and new kind of books to the kids. Still a playful manner and laid out nicely. I think presentation matters a lot with kids.
Yeah.
They pick up things which are laid out well and start facing and easier to find. So that was like so even I is like for teachers.
So I have a similar shelf stationed in my library called I'm a Risk Taker. And there are various different books which I know children would never pick up. And those books are there. And then if you're a risk taker, you are free to pick up a book, read, and then share it with the class next time. And I have had a similar response. Children want to read that book. And the parents came up with this book. She never read it. There was this book called Unborn Boy. It's one of my favorite books by Chandra. And I get that book there. And after that, so many boys wanted to read that book. So many boys came up. The parents came up to me and said, you know, son told me that he cries. And he's not scared of sharing that. And that was beautiful. So, yes, that's an amazing strategy.
It's been shared activity and cultural as the leader said, it was a role for Arsha Parliament. She was basically on the insurance of and she was a fantastic down in the history. She had a program where she got books and she made it out. And we actually read it about it. She wrote it for a full day. After the mission that we did, they were given coupons for 100 rupees. And they could go and purchase any of their choice from 100 rupees. Now, if you want something for 80 rupees and only 20 left, when you do bargaining and bargaining, you cover it and see how people find another more choice. So it led to a lot of social interaction, and at the end of the day, they all carried home. Some of them carried something from the children, some of the characters were on the small. That's their choice. You take a choice you have. But I found that it's a fantastic way of ensuring wanting to creative. It gives them the choice, as what all of us say, give them the choice, give them the opportunity, give them the levels that I can do something that I want. And those so that. So you can say, lady for those books, I don't think we need the kids to come and do that. But it's a fantastic. This is like the tasting system, I think we even have the buying system. So maybe they don't have to take it home, they can work out something else. But this 100 rupee thing was a fantastic way of everything wanting many.
Yeah.
Obvious shit, yeah. I would say the right shit.
So we had a bazaar right now, Great for Bazaar just yesterday. So children donated books to school, and when those books were sold, it is called 50 rupees money rupees, and children are free to buy it. And then whatever money they collected, they donated it to the round table library and like the open library. So they donated it and then they purchased, and then there was a variety of books, and it was just 50 or 100, and they would choose. Also, I thought about parents, and now this new concept which I really like. Instead of return gifts, there's a table spread of books. Different varieties of different genres, levels. And when a child leaves a birthday party, they've given that the privilege to select a book of their choice, and that's the return gift. So I also really like that idea. That was really like to promote reading and good reading, The children would love
the poem things. Going this one for journey. I'm a teacher like I have been for 7 years. And the question was very pleasant. I was really interested when you said you started the elementary with parents. At any point did the parents express to you that this was a pleasure that they have carried forward from their childhood for an first video which made them non-teachers? Or is it simply that they did not choose to be a reader when they were younger than they have now? That's something very curious about.
Okay, so not really, but I think everyone had their own story with their reading journey. And for most, it was just that they stopped reading. Some people felt that, they're reading, but they read the same authors and they just feel stuck. Some literally came up to me and said, I haven't finished a book in over a year. I start and I just can't finish. There were no real stories of childhood, but there were some stories of I used to be a reader. Yeah. I'm going to answer your question on
Treat.
So, if
Thank you. I really enjoy your perspective. And
so, sorry, but if I may share, I'm sorry, I'm sharing a lot because I have so many experiences. So this is something which parents very regularly on the PRD. I have many parents tell me that I used to read. I tell you what's challenging. They said we were given this exposure. We had one, and I had so many cases of parents doing it. We had one library which with a one college, and we were actually going quietly. So we picked up a book, fancy to edit lighting, some restricted authors, no exposure, nobody reading aloud to us, we never had someone like you read to us, we never had like a palette of books in front of us. So maybe I think the restriction came exposure, that's what most parents are doing, and then time limitation. Then when we move on into a world where focus is on work and travel, so no time to read. So these are the things which have covered from parents very regularly. That they didn't get this exposure, so that's why we did that and they stopped reading.
Sorry, I did
I'm sorry, but there's a sort of a part to which I thought of after the fact is when I started working with the dance, what emerged to me is how much guilt women carry, So many women who signed up for the reading program, they looked at it as one more thing they could do better. And that is something that I really wanted to break down, and it was right at the beginning when the tone was set and leave your guilt at the door. Come in. If you can read, it's great. If you can't, it's fine. And that's how we went forward. So it started as an experimental program. As in, if I get 10 people, let's just do it. Ended up doing 6 editions of the program because there was no pressure. There's zero pressure at all.